Many years ago, my father and uncle tried to persuade my maternal grandmother to join them right here in the Scottish Highlands. She agreed, but she had two conditions. Firstly, there must be a minyan to pray with. Secondly, she must have kosher meat. But how? This was the 1950s, and the nearest kosher butcher was around 300 miles away. Fortunately, my uncle was a resourceful man. He found a shochet willing to teach, and he was willing to learn. My grandmother got her chickens, and my uncle acquired a new skill. When this week's Torah portion, Parashat Re'eh, discusses the laws of kashrut, it makes an interesting assumption, given that it's written for desert-dwelling people. It assumes that there will always be an abundance of food choices. This week's Haftarah assumes the same thing, urging the people to buy wine and milk without money and without price. In a first world society, we're accustomed to making that same assumption. People may not choose to eat everything that's put in front of them, but there has always been a certain level of confidence that what we want will be there. Well, when lockdown began, that assumption was challenged. Basics like flour, lentils, even broccoli became scarce. For many of us, the situation was no more than a minor inconvenience. It was also temporary. Within 3 months, deliveries were back in business and flour was back on the shelves. We breathed a collective sigh of relief. Except that for some people, it was never that easy. Britain is not a geographical desert, but it's estimated that 1.2 million people here in the UK live in a food desert. They're unable to access nutritious food due to cost and transportation issues. In our local borough of Brent, Sufra reported a 202% increase in the need for food aid since March. The implications for physical and mental health are clear. And yet, 45% of the fruit and vegetables we produce are never eaten, and the average British household wastes 3 million tonnes of food a year, even in lockdown. Sometimes individuals or community groups can solve a small-scale food scarcity problem. When I had trouble getting hold of flour to bake for key workers in lockdown, a lovely Muslim lady from my neighbourhood came knocking on my door with 3 huge bags, and she refused to charge me for them. When my grandmother wasn't able to access her kosher meat, my uncle found a creative solution. Individual kindness and creativity are vitally important ethical obligations for us as Jews, but they're not sufficient to solve national problems. Parashat Re'eh emphasizes the role of the many types of tzedakah that may be performed and are being performed every day by ourselves, our friends at Sufra, and by the thousands of other organizations that work in this way. But in a large and complex society, even that is insufficient. The Torah does not speak of evidence-based policy decisions or the involvement of the food industry, transport networks, and the retail sector. But it does speak of visibility. As Eitan Cooper, Vice President of the Schechter Institute, points out, Parashat Re'eh begins with an imperative to see and ends with a reminder that Yira'eh, you must or you shall be seen. If anyone was affected by food scarcities in lockdown and feels impelled to speak for others for whom this is a daily occurrence, it's imperative to stand up and be counted, both through individual actions and coming together as a society. The historian Paul Johnson noted that one of the superpowers of the Jewish people is the ability to build both responsible individuals and strong socially active communities. Parashat Re'eh uses both the singular and the plural forms of the word you to emphasize these social and collective responsibilities. It's this unique ability, coupled with the Jewish experience of injustice and inequity, and of course, the huge importance of food in Jewish culture, that I believe may equip us, perhaps better than anyone, to take action to combat food poverty. As we enjoy our Shabbat meal tonight, it may be worth considering what action we can take for those who cannot. Shabbat Shalom.